emotions. We have a sense of gratitude, a sense of fear, a sense of concern, and also a sense of grief tonight. We are grateful that our communities were not hit harder by the fury of Hurricane Irma. We also have a sense of fear because we've seen the fury of what such a hurricane can do. And we have a deep concern for those millions who have lost everything in this storm, in particular those who have lost loved ones. And we grieve tonight. We grieve not only with a family in Milton that lost a son this week, but we grieve in the aftermath of 9/11, which we promise to never forget. And we are deeply concerned that attacks like that will continue in our day and age, and our safety is at stake. And so we pray tonight that you help us to be vigilant, to expect the unexpected, to be strong and to be resilient, and to respond to emergencies of all kinds in our community, and never let go of our sense of watchfulness. We pray for your comfort for the family that lost their child. And we ask tonight that you would fill this place with your presence. As we go about the affairs of the city, I pray that you give your wisdom to our city council and our staff as they seek to improve our quality of life and safeguard it. Help us to be one as a community and be supportive to one another in all things. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Remco. Okay, I'd like to call the special called meeting of the Milton City Council for Wednesday, September 13th, 2017 to order. Sudi, if you'll please call the roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll. For the special called regular meeting this evening, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, either during the public hearing or during the public call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that the individual has filed a notarized affidavit with the city clerk that they have the authority to speak on behalf of that organization prior to the agenda item being called. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morick is going to be here in a little while. For the record, Councilmembers Bill Lusk and Bert Hewitt are absent.
Okay. Before we say our pledge, and it's an honor tonight that we've got our Milton Fire and Police Honor Guard here to lead us in pledge, I've got a few words I want to read. It was with a heavy heart that we remember the events of September 11th, 2001. 16 years ago, we bore witness to the most cowardly act perpetrated on American soil. Everyone in this room can remember where they were on that fateful September day when 2,977 innocent people died in a desperate attempt to frighten Americans into submission. However, these despicable individuals did not consider the resilience, the resolve, and the heroism that is embodied in the American spirit. While the loss of our family members, friends, and first responders was heartbreaking, it has forever empowered us and the freedom we stand for. While the display of flags, bumper stickers, and sentiment has waned over the years, rest assured that we will never forget. Our brave soldiers have brought the war on terrorism to their doorsteps and have decimated them at every turn, while our brave first responders and the vigilance of Americans continue to protect us here at home. Tonight, our City of Milton Honor Guard will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance in the honor of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of freedom.
Please rise for the presentation of the colors.
Color guard. Halt. Left. Face.
Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Post. Colors. Right. Face. Forward. March.
You may be seated.
Shannon, can we have our honor guard and the council come down for a picture? Thank you. You can put yours. Would it be better to do it here or up in the back?
Yes, in our usual spot.
Thank you, guys. Get us all in?
Yes. Half a step to this way. You're right. Go. Good. Go the same. You lower your axe just a little bit. That's perfect. Okay, we're going right here. Say that very often. Ready? We're going right here. We're going 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
I just want to say something. I want to not only thank you guys for being here tonight, it's a pleasure and honor for us to have you here in your pledge and to be here. Not just for September 11th, which we're talking about tonight in honor and memory, but also for every day. Everybody that's here that's in a uniform and is protecting us selflessly. I just want to thank you on behalf of our city. Thank you guys. Okay, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to our meeting tonight. Sudi, if you could please call the next item.
Our next item is approval of the meeting agenda. Agenda item number 17225.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Mayor, if it's okay, I'd like to make a comment as well.
Can we
Public comment.
do the agenda first and then?
That's fine, yeah, just
Absolutely,
make sure
we
we do it.
discussed that, so we're good.
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as supplied by the city clerk.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Thurman on the approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Next item before public comment, Councilmember Kuntz would like to make a statement. Ken, I believe we good on
Mayor.
procedure on that.
Right, so if you want to make a statement, that's perfectly appropriate. If you're not making it during public comment from the dais, it will be in your official capacity as an elected official.
Correct. Well,
Okay.
thank you
Is
very
the council good with that? I'm assuming.
Okay. Can I vote on that?
What's that?
Can I vote on
No,
that?
you have to
All right.
recuse.
Thank you, Council, for letting me speak, and to the staff as well, and in my capacity as a city councilman elected official. I just want to make some brief statements with regards to what happened at the last special called council meeting. First, I want to specifically apologize to Councilmember Joe Longoria. Joe has served the citizens of Milton in his capacity the last 8 years, and I want to be the first to congratulate him on being unopposed with the opportunity to serve Milton in his final term. I've sent him emails to apologize for the tone of my comments last week. I have left him a voice message to apologize and spoke with you prior to this meeting as well. And I'm very glad to do it again in public comment tonight. It's kind of fitting that this is, after the conversation about what you read about 9/11, because, there are people that don't know how to get along in different areas, and I think that's important. So prior to that meeting, Joe and I had a heated argument that should have taken place behind closed doors and not in a council chamber. And what I really apologize for was coming down hard on him when he had recused himself and had no opportunity for rebuttal. And that was not fair of me to him. Looking back and pausing for self-reflection, as I often do, I stated my opinion in a way that should have been done differently. As one should do when things get difficult, I've sought the advice of many of my close friends and acquaintances. I've talked with our city attorney, our city manager, and a few of you on the council. I've consulted with outside attorneys who confirmed some of the slanderous accusations upon me by one of our residents. I've studied, read books, prayed, and most importantly, I've discussed things with my wife, Radonna. Our spouses are in this game with us, and they suffer most while we are ridiculed by those who might abuse their First Amendment rights. I think our political opponents hope that they can make us silent, but I believe these events will only make us stronger. While there are some frustrations I have and many of the community share, I do believe we have the strength to move past our own weaknesses and come together to move our city to be the best in the Southeast, not just in the state. But that will only happen if we choose to come together. Right now, I do have some concerns about that, but I do have hope. And Joe, I meant it when I told you I felt I was losing a friend, but that was my feelings, and hopefully time will heal whatever damage has come to our relationship, and I sincerely mean that. So to Councilman Joe Longoria, the rest of the council, the staff, and the citizens of Milton, I appreciate whatever forgiveness you may or may not offer. And I look forward to moving on and upholding our oaths of office, which we all made, which was to defend the laws of the city of Milton, the laws of the state of Georgia, and the laws of these great United States of America. So help us God. Thank you.
All right, City, our next item is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any general public comments, sir.
Okay, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. If you'd please read those items.
First item this evening is approval of the August 21st, 2017 regular City Council meeting minutes. Agenda item number 17226. Next is approval of the August 28th, 2017 special called City Council meeting minutes. Agenda item number 17227. The next item is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Lowe Engineers for City Engineer Services. Agenda item number 17228. Approval of a task order to provide Freemanville at Providence right-of-way services. Agenda item number 17229. Next is approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Ed Castro Landscape, Inc. for the construction of patio and landscape improvements for Fire Station 41. Agenda item number 17230. Item number 6 is approval of subdivision plats and revisions. 6 Freemanville LLC land lots 311 and 338 at 16070 Freemanville Road. This is a minor plat, 3 lots, 6.15 total acres, 0.48 lots per acre. Next is Chick-fil-A Inc., minor plat, move property line 1 lot, 1.125 total acres. This is agenda item number 17231. Our seventh and final consent agenda item this evening is approval of an addendum between Fulton County, Georgia and the City of Milton, Georgia for the 2018 to 2020 cooperation agreement. Agenda item number 17232.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Kuntz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to our reports and presentations. Sudi, if you'll please call the first item.
This item is a proclamation recognizing Anuya Tadapali for volunteer service with senior citizens. This is being presented by Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
I love this good stuff. So, I was contacted by Anuya Tadapali's family just a couple weeks ago and found out that she actually is teaching chess to many of the seniors in our community. Now, I don't know how many in this room play chess. I play it probably 4 or 5 times a day with the 5-minute version, so every side gets 5 minutes, and I'm not saying I'm any good, but I do appreciate the game because there's a lot of strategy that's involved, and you can't hide if your opponent gets you or checks you, and there's not a whole lot you can do. So I pretty much think that Anuya's got a killer instinct. She's just not telling anybody. But it's an honor for me to read this proclamation on her behalf. So recognizing Anuya Tadapali for volunteer service with senior citizens. Whereas Anuya Tadapali is currently a senior at Milton High School, and whereas she is the founder of Chess for a Cause, a volunteer organization to mobilize young adults to visit senior centers in our community and to teach and play chess. And whereas the mission statement for the Chess for a Cause states, improve mental health in seniors through brain exercises and increased interactions with youth, provide seniors with the training and resources to play chess regularly, provide high school students with the opportunity to interact with seniors through weekly chess sessions, guide and build a network of school clubs to spread the message across Georgia and the world. And whereas the interactive sessions not only improve memory functions for seniors, but also provide a way to improve self-confidence in both the seniors and young volunteers. And whereas Anuya's work is recently recognized by Georgia's Department of Human Resources Division of Aging Service for the impact that Chess for a Cause is making towards making our communities age-friendly. And whereas she has also received the Presidential Gold Award from the Corporation for National Community Service 2 consecutive years. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, hereby recognize and thank Anuya Tadapali for her dedicated service to the city and its senior citizens, given under our hand and seal of the City of Milton, Georgia, on this now 13th day of September 2017. Joe Lockwood. So, and I guess if everybody would like to take a picture with Anuya and with you and your family, Anuya,
If you guys would step forward.
step forward, please, that would be great. There we go. There we go.
Would somebody in the audience or mind taking pictures? Would you like to be in? Yeah. We get somebody with a camera. Just see you.
Actually give you a snippet, a video of the entire thing, and I'll send it to you.
Or you can put your name on someone.
Yes, but Courtney can keep video and Courtney.
You can have it instantly.
So we'll take half a step back, closer to, and then take a step this way for me. Full step, a little bit more, a little bit more. Tighten up just a little bit. We're good. Thank you. All right, we're looking right here. 1, 2, 3. Let's do one more. 1, 2, 3. Good. Thank you.
I can, yeah. I have pretty good from the side.
Yeah, you have to.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you here. It was just inspirational what you're doing, and it's great to have a future leader like you here.
And I would say she challenges all of the game of chess. So.
Okay, so if we can move on to our first presentation, if you don't mind sounding those items.
First presentation first is consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2017 budget for each fund of the city of Milton, Georgia, amending the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, amending the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 17233, our second and final first presentation, consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to adopt the fiscal 2018 budget for each fund of the city of Milton, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 17234. This item was discussed at the August 14th City Council work session.
Mayor, I'll approve the reading of the first presentation as read.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Kuntz, a second Councilmember Morag. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, Judy, we're going to move on to our first public hearing. Will you please call that item?
This item is consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to adopt the fiscal 2018 budget for each fund of the city of Milton, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 17234. This was discussed at the August 14th City Council work session. First presentation was this evening. Ms. Stacy Inglis.
Do we have any, I'm sorry, I want to ask this question. Do we have any public
We
comment?
do not.
Okay,
We
I
do
didn't know
not.
if we had,
Yeah, we don't.
so we need to address that. Thank you very much. So once again, this is coming before you. I know that you've had this for roughly about a month. There's been a minor change, but I will say that right now our revenues and expenditures, they're balanced for the general fund. Revenues and expenditures amount to $31,815,240. The change, most significant change from what you had, what was presented on the 14th of August till today, was a change in the revenues for property taxes, about a $200,000 increase in revenues. Between now and then, I've spoken with the Fulton County Tax Commissioner's Office and have received some hopeful news that they plan on billing at the end of this month. Therefore, we should receive our tax digest at the end of this month and should be able to bill out by mid-October. That is about 2 weeks earlier than what I anticipated initially. So that means that we should have a higher rate of revenues for 2017. I know a portion of it's still going to come over in 2018, but in looking at the tax digest that I did receive, it looks like we will still have higher than anticipated revenues because of newly improved properties in Milton. Right now, the anticipated, or what the revenues are based on, is still the 4.731 millage rate. That has been the same millage rate that we've had since the incorporation of the city. Obviously, as we go through the year, we can take a look at what that is, what that looks like for our budget going forward, and what our tax digest looks like for next year. We still don't know what Fulton County Tax Assessor's Office is going to do between now and 2018 tax bills whenever they come to us. So we'll be watching that closely and talking with them. Other than that, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. I know that we have all of our department heads here that would be happy to answer any questions you may have. I'll be happy to give the floor to you.
Okay. Is there Questions for Stacy on this? Any for any department heads or?
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Okay. And to confirm, we don't have any public comment.
We do not have.
City, so we'll close the public hearing. Okay. Don't have any zoning agenda items, so we'll move on to unfinished business. City, if you'll please sound the first item on unfinished business.
This item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20 of the City Code, Noise Control, agenda item number 17170. First presentation was at the July 10th regular City Council meeting. This was deferred at the August 7th City Council meeting. Ms. Kathy Field, Ms. Robin McDonald.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So as Sudi had indicated, this item you all had recommended deferral for staff to do some more work on the noise ordinance back in August 7th. So I believe that we have tried to address most of the issues as well as had another legal review after those issues were addressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk through. There's not that many changes or that many discussion issues, but I want to walk through page by page of the noise ordinance and highlight what has been changed based on the discussions as well as with discussions with you as well as with the city attorney. So we don't have anything on page 1. Again, on page 2, we had already created a definition for loud and unreasonable noise, which kind of gives this overall level of acceptance of noise. And then if you go on to page 3, well, before we go to page 3, at the bottom of page 2, we amended at section 20-659. We have a new title, says activities permitted that produce sound impacting residential life. So the next page, on page 3, one of the council members had requested that we work on the tables to make it more user-friendly and easier to read, so we've made that attempt at that. So, and I also tried to separate between commercial and non-commercial uses. So as you look at the table, the first item on the left is operation of construction machinery by commercial users. And then you can go across and see when they are permitted to be used. So previously, it was the opposite. It was you cannot use it during these times. So I think this is a little bit more easier to understand and more natural to say, hey, this is when you can operate between this time and this time on these certain days. The next item is lawn maintenance and garage machinery by commercial users. This is 7:30 a.m. to sunset, Monday through Friday, and Saturday, 9 a.m. to sunset. And then we do not allow Sunday operation, and then federal holidays is 9 a.m. to sunset. And then we go on to dealing with individuals on their residential property. So the operation of construction machinery or garage machinery by the residential individuals on residential property, which registers more than 65 dBA, which is a decrease from the previous version at the nearest complainant's property line. So the only time you can do that is between 7:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m., and then on Monday through Friday, and on Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Sunday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., because we all know we got to do those chores on Sunday at times, and then also on federal holidays, we permit the residential use of construction machinery or garage machinery on federal holidays, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, it's similar. If the next line is operation of lawn maintenance machinery by individuals on their residential property, 7:30 a.m. to sunset, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 9 a.m. to sunset, and Sunday, 9 a.m. to sunset, as well as federal holidays is 9 a.m. to sunset. And then lastly is the operation of waste haulers, and this is consistent with our waste management, not waste management, but the ordinance that that dictates how they are operated, the waste haulers. So again, this is totally consistent with when they're allowed to operate, which is basically Monday through Sunday. So then the next item is page 4. So we go to C at the top. This section shall not apply to C3. Activities conducted on public playgrounds or private school grounds, which are conducted in accordance with the manner of which such spaces are generally used, including but not limited to school athletic and school entertainment events up to 12 midnight. So this is based on, input from the city attorney, and he can elaborate more about discussions regarding Fulton County rules and regulations, because I know that was a concern of the noise that impacts our residential property owners. But at this point, this is what it includes. So if you have a private school, we can dictate how much noise and up to a certain point, as well as our own public playgrounds and fields and such. And then on to the next section is amplified sound produced within all zoning districts. And again, we reformatted the table to be what is permitted. And on page 5 at the top, it's amplified sound that impacts residential life. So I won't go through every single one of them, but hopefully this will also satisfy some of the concerns of the council. Again, we do not have anything higher than 65 dBA. So if you go down to the third from the bottom in the public right-of-way, and it talks about including streets or sidewalks or in city parks without having actual on-site possession of a permit issued by the City of Milton Police registering 65 dBA or greater, 10 feet or more from any electromechanical speaker. So again, we reduce that down to 65. And it sets aside each time that it's permitted for the amplified sound. And then we go on to page 6. Basically, this is just clarifying the process for additional amplification. The city attorney had made these suggestions of deleting what was C1, kind of toward the top, and we reinserted it into the actual permit for additional amplification for residential or commercial uses. And then on page 7, we deleted the outdoor amplification because I think that was just an error of duplication. And then minor change on page 8, section 20.6612, C, we inserted in order to protect public health, safety, and welfare regarding that issue of a mitigation plan. And then lastly, on page 10, after variances, previously you had seen a section regarding mediation, and after further review with the city attorney, it was determined it would be better to delete that statement. And again, we're more than happy as a staff to encourage mediation when needed between two private parties, and we can direct them to the Fulton County Superior Court, which they provide that service. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it, or any of the other issues that might have been brought up. I hopefully can have answers for you on that as well.
Okay, Matt?
The only question I have, and just really for discussion on the council, is if we want to make a change, and I don't know, I'm just thinking of this for some reason, but amplified sound that impacts residential life, is 9 p.m. too late on a Sunday? And just asking the question, if you guys think that or not.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just wondering.
Anybody?
If you don't care, that's fine too. I
wouldn't say don't care, but
yeah, exactly. It was just one of those questions. I haven't seen them in staff from your perspective.
you know,
Do you think that?
Here's the reality. You know, whenever we make these judgment calls and ordinances in order to protect the public and our citizens, but sometimes you make a change in order to help out, you know, the situation, but then you find later that maybe it's hurting something else. So that being said, if nobody's very strong about changing it, then it's always something that we can go, if we run into later that it's an issue, you know, we could always bring it back, if that makes sense. Joe?
So Robin, the changes that you got marked in red, those are, I want to make sure I understand, they're changes from the original revision, or they're changes to our existing ordinance?
No, okay, so so it's what was the last version from July 7th. So I have the original one. It's totally gone. You don't see any of the original, what is currently.
So this replaces?
This replaces it,
okay.
Yes, correct.
So you made reference a couple of times to specific decibel call-outs.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that any of the changes that we made, when you look at our existing ordinance, we haven't gone up in any of those categories, have we?
That is correct. That's why we decreased it down to 65
Okay,
to be
and that
consistent.
was my next point,
Yes.
is we actually reduced, in the original ordinance, we had some places where 70 dB was called out, and those have all gone down to 65, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And in terms of just remembering what citizen input we got last time.
Right.
In terms of special use permits, this doesn't impact or change the language that's included with a special use permit today. Is that correct?
Well, let me just walk you through that.
Okay.
So I'm glad you asked that. So I know that the resident had spoken about the property on Hopewell Road that was done a few years ago. And so in that use permit, it's an older use permit from Fulton County, and it called out a certain DBA permitted, and I can look it up. But ultimately, if our new ordinance requires a lower noise threshold, then the noise ordinance will supersede the use permit and their conditions. So, and then let me speak to our newer agricultural related use permit that was more recently approved on Batesville. So we were a little bit smarter. We just said regarding noise, it should be consistent with Chapter 20. So we won't ever have a conflicting issue with that.
Or when there's a conflict, the noise ordinance prevails.
Right.
Right? Okay, that's good.
Yep.
So we can confidently say, regardless of what's out there, this noise ordinance is what we're going to be adhering to.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Karen?
I just want to make sure we're not passing something that has unintended consequences. Living on a golf course at 7 o'clock on Saturdays, they are out there with all of their blowers and everything else, blowing off the course, blowing off the tee boxes, blowing off the parking lot. It sounds like to me that would not be allowed.
So that was
It's a commercial use?
The way it's written is that those activities operated for non-residential purposes, i.e. the golf course, that they would only be able to do that between 7:30 a.m. and sunset regarding the lawn maintenance.
Have we had any feedback on that? Because that's a good point.
I mean, they're out there well before 7:30 a.m. because the golfers are out there at 7:30 a.m. ready to tee off. I mean, that's part of living on a golf course is you kind of expect to have those noises on Saturday morning. So I just want to make sure we're not making a law that we really can't enforce or intend to enforce and not going to be upsetting a lot of.
So I have had input from citizens that are kind of on the opposite side of it, that they would like not to have all the maintenance being done at 6 a.m. and whatever times. So it's really up to you all if you want us to amend it in such a way to look at that specific type of use.
Robin, with the input you've had, was that on a golf course or just in general?
Specifically the golf courses. We get a lot of, not a lot, but fairly frequent complaints about the different issues about lawn maintenance for the golf course.
I mean, it's loud and it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, but
Even on Saturdays?
oh yeah, especially on Saturdays, because there are a lot more golfers here on Saturdays than there are any other day. So, and they start teeing off well before 7:30 on Saturdays in the summer. So, I just want to make, is it 7:30 or is it 9, since it's
The way that we've redone the chart, it should be lawn maintenance and garage machinery by commercial users, 7:30 a.m. to sunset. So,
that 7 days a week, or is that?
so that would be Monday through Friday. That's that way. Saturday, it's 9 a.m. to sunset.
Oh,
There's absolutely none on Sunday,
Well, they're doing it on Sunday and Saturday
and 9
mornings,
a.m. to sunset on federal
well before 9
holidays.
a.m.
I mean, that's a good point because, obviously there's going to be some people that would like it to be later, but also there's, in a country club or a golf course, there's going to be, the biggest draw is people want to play golf. So I'm wondering if that's something we need to research a little bit more, or if we could, exempt an actual, a club, a golf course to have different rules. I don't know if that's something we'd want to explore, or leave it up to the neighborhood on that, or I don't know. I'm just kind of.
I just hate to pass a law that doesn't have the.
So I think that, if it was your, if you all would like to kind of make a category for golf course type equipment and maintenance, then we can create a new category and the times appropriately. It's not a sign ordinance. It's not like we can't call them out and say this is what we'd like to see or not see.
Personally, I think we might want to explore that a little bit because, again, that could have some negative consequences. Matt?
Yeah, I think it might be a situation where some commercial activities might need to have their own category. I could see golf courses being one. I might see equestrian being one as well. So it's a possibility, just depending on how that looks. So I'm open to that.
Ken, you have any input, or Steve?
Well, with respect to those sorts of considerations, there's no legal impediment to that. Certainly different industries may in fact warrant different consideration. That's something that you could either try to carve out a separate section of your code, or candidly, I have seen ordinances like this where there's literally been footnotes in those performance tables that says that you might give the director some discretion to carve out administrative variances for those sorts of entities. Again, it just, to Councilmember Thurman's point, it is sort of the law of unintended consequences. You get something in an ordinance that makes sense within this chamber, and then you go out in the real world, and suddenly you've got upset golfers that play on greens they're not happy with at 8 in the morning. So, I understand that. So I think the possibility of cleaning that up you have a lot of discretion on how to clean that up. If you
What
want
about the possibility of legally allowing within a golf course, for the management and HOA to have authority on that?
That would be challenging, okay? I'm going to backtrack then.
I'm just questioning because, if there are citizens that are in there, that are would prefer later hours for the lawn,
the easy way to then would be just to exempt equestrian activities and golf courses from the code altogether. What we can't have is somebody, B-O-D-Y, other than this entity setting the requirement.
Okay. So that's an option there. You could.
But that would be back. But my recommendation, if we're going to go that path, would be to back those two uses out of the code altogether.
Okay.
But then they would be totally unregulated as far as sound.
That is correct. Right. That's right.
And I don't know that that's a good idea, but.
Then that would make me go to the next increment, would be to drop a footnote in there and say that with respect to golf course uses and equestrian uses, the director is given authority to offer up an administrative variance on some of those perhaps start times.
Maybe, again, to your point, at 7 o'clock, on a weekend, it's golf when they're busy.
They're all there at 7 o'clock.
Would it be
Not even daylight yet, and they're all there waiting to.
do a footnote that, when it comes to, and again, I'm just throwing this out here, golf courses and equestrian
events
uses, the time is 7 to, whatever.
Well, you could even say that the director shall have, sort of like with the fireworks legislation where they said that the General Assembly said none after none of, until 9, but the local, county can do a certain range. You could almost plug something like that in here and say, that with respect to equestrian and golf course uses, the director shall have authority to grant variances within a very narrow range, to pull it back just a little bit, but not unbridled, because I don't think our director would want that, and that would give you some comfort that it's not going to go crazy either.
I'm open up to ideas. What are you guys thinking?
Is the sole issue we're grappling with right now, though, is literally the start times for this machinery in the morning hours?
I believe so. I believe specifically it's in the morning hours on the weekends. So I really think the morning hours on the weekends should be the same as they are during the week. 9 o'clock is, it's not reasonable to tell people they can't tee off till after 9 o'clock because they can't get the greens blown off until then. I mean, that's, they'll all be at my house wanting breakfast.
Joe?
Yeah.
I think procedurally, I think we can maybe do a footnote from a golf course perspective and have a start time done for the equestrian side or anything like that. We might want to give that to the equestrian committee, have them just make a decision on that as a recommendation. We can always make a change if we need to this whenever after we pass it, right? So that might be the way to go, I would think, to solve that problem now, but then also do some more research on the rest of it and see what happens. And if we get those complaints, then we can make those adjustments.
I'd like to suggest that we do offer it up as a footnote for those two issues, and then even to Matt's point, if question committee wants to look at it, or the director can come back to us if there's issues with it, or if it doesn't work out in your purview, if you have a little bit of flexibility on those two items or two activities, then we could always bring it back if it looks like it's going to be an issue for people.
Excuse me. Can I have a question about the about the equestrian? So you're not speaking about machinery per se. You're just saying the activity if somebody has.
It would be, evening rink riding or things like that come around, but that would be the question. I think that's one of those things where we make sure we encourage the business aspect of our equestrian community. But I think that involves their expertise and their involvement and their research on the equestrian committee to make the determination. So that might be something we give to them just to have them look at it. But for now, I think we can go with what Karen's point is on the golf course.
I'd like to, though, before we exclude the equestrian, equipment and all that, that is, it's the same thing as golf. I know I have a farm, and, sometimes weekends are the only time, and people want to get on the tractor and get stuff done before it gets hot. So
sure.
And usually it's on a larger piece of property, so it's not affecting a neighbor. So I would like, put the equestrian in there too. And then again, like we said, with input, the director can have some reign there as to what to do. So personally, I'd like to see
That's fine.
equestrian and
morning activities are fine.
equestrian and golf on the same
Okay.
page. So
My only question is how late into the evening should they go, and that's something I don't know.
okay. Anything else?
So are we offering up that advice and we can vote on this now and just let them make those changes, or?
I think what we're offering up, if someone wants to make a motion, is to be able to have a footnote that golf courses and equestrian facilities are under the purview of
You're ready to go.
the director.
I should have written that down, because if we want to make a motion, I need to know exactly what to say.
And you want to add some words?
I do. I've got a couple of thoughts, and I want to ask a clarifying question first before we get into that. I know there was the discussion about which one controls, if there's other conflicting provisions or other provisions at odds with respect to noise. And Robin and Kathy, obviously your input as well. So what is the intention of the council? Do you want the noise ordinance to control if there is any other noise-based regulation, whether it's in zoning or conditional use permits, or you want whatever is the more restrictive to control, or you want the noise ordinance to control always? Just want to make sure I did.
Well, that's a very good question, Ken. I would say we want what's ever more restrictive. My understanding is there's only 2 special permits that would even come into play here. Is that correct?
There may be other permits. I'm just saying that those 2 that were mentioned, the old version and the new version is not an issue because it refers back to Chapter 20.
Right.
And then there are probably other use permits that are non-agricultural that may have noise. And that's what the advice from the city attorney was, that if, let's say they allow 75 dBA, but ours says 65, then the noise ordinance would supersede it, correct?
And I agree with that, but sometimes the easiest way to get to a solution is just to say what you mean. I would hate for us to have this debate about which one controls. If the intention of the council is, because there may be zoning conditions that contain some noise requirements that may have been worked out 5 years ago that no one remembers. From an interpretational standpoint, does the council want that if there is a conflict between a noise-based requirement and this noise code, whatever is stricter in the situation always controls?
Well, the only question I would have about that, though, we may have a special use, and I'm just going to make an example. We don't have this, and I don't know that we ever will, but let's say, there was a miniature Verizon amphitheater, a little small venue or something in Milton, and it was for music and things like that, that obviously, the use, if it had to be held to a certain decibel, would not work. So on a and again, I'm not saying that's would ever come up, but something similar to that, an example. Would it be better to have the use permit dictate individually that?
Typically, the use permit is going to be based upon the specific conditions generating the permit in the first place, which is why I wanted to ask the question, because I don't,
And I probably jumped the gun, because in thinking about this, it's okay for us to change the general rules that everybody follows every day, because everybody knows that we're changing the rules. Somebody that signed up for a special use permit agreed to a certain set of rules. It would be unfair for us to change those at this point. So I'll flip-flop real quick and say it's probably the special use permit that should win out.
In that circumstance, I would think so, too.
Well, and I do think, though, it would be consistent with typical ordinance drafting that the most specific ordinance regulating the conduct would control over a more general ordinance. But then, of course, the special use permit is the most specific sort of grant of authority you guys give. I mean, typically, focusing on that express use with that express user. So if we wanted to add some language that said that in the event of a noise standard that is different than the regulations in this noise ordinance, the more restrictive standard will control, except a special use permit shall control over both, because I think that's the intention. So in other words, generally speaking, the more restrictive requirement controls, except within the context of a special use permit, where the conditions in the use permit would control.
I can get behind that.
Okay. So is it council? I mean, we're not voting on it yet, but Karen.
I did have one other question. A lot of these golf clubs have weddings there at the club almost every Saturday night, and they do have amplified sound outside quite often. What would be their rules for amplified sound on a Saturday night for a wedding? I mean, weddings are there where they make their money.
So that's addressed on page 5. Amplified sound that impacts residential life, and then if they exceed that or go outside the bounds of that, then you go to section 20-661 on page 6, and they would have to ask for permits to exceed the sound amplification on private property for additional amplification.
Well, I mean, sometimes I really like the music, so it doesn't impact my life, and sometimes I really don't care for it, so it does impact my life. But I mean, that's my personal preference. But I just want to make sure that we're clear so that everybody knows exactly what the new laws are concerning the noise, and we got to make sure that we get these out to all the country clubs, because they do have outside noise.
Right, but they operate under the noise ordinances today, right?
Yeah, but they're not really, it's not really enforced unless there's a real problem.
There are opportunities as well under the new ordinance to be able to apply for permits to exceed the, kind of in the Verizon type example you used. If there's going to be an event, they can just get a permit. So that might be something that would help with the situation. Was there a limit on the number of permits?
There is.
Yeah.
The limits on hours.
How about number received?
Yeah.
I don't think it was that many.
I don't see a number
I don't know why
of
that's ringing a
times.
bell in my head.
Yeah, I was thinking very poor.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that all of these places that regularly hold outdoor weddings and other things understand, what the rules are, because they're not going to automatically know what these are.
So I think maybe another question, and I don't know if the city attorney can answer this, that if, these country clubs have consistent events, should they be required to apply for a use permit for those special event facilities?
That would be certainly consistent with what we're just talking about,
Right.
To tailor the noise requirements to what they're doing. Yes.
But, they have events every Saturday night, so if you're having to get them to almost every Saturday night, get a permit every Saturday night, that just seems...
That's not what I was alluding to, was to have it like Little River Farm. So they have events every week, well, maybe not every weekend, but almost every weekend.
Okay.
So it might behoove the city to require all the different facilities that have those type of uses to go in for a use permit.
A one-time permit is
Yeah, it's a one-time permit, just like Little
tailor the
River
permit
Farms has
to their
one
use.
use permit
And so that permit would be for
all the time.
all the time.
All
They
the
wouldn't have to
time.
get one each time.
No.
Right.
The only issue I have with that, and I think Councilmember Thurman might agree, is, the more red tape in government, we expect our citizens and businesses to go through. It's just, sometimes there's some implications there and some, do work on them. So again, it's, are we fixing something that's broken or something not broken? Are we trying to fix it? So, again, I would agree on, especially on country club, golf courses that we have several of, how far do we want to get into fixing something that may not be broken? I don't know. I don't get many complaints as is. I don't know. Robin said she's got a few, but is that something?
The purpose of this rewrite was because of the complexity with the enforcement of the old one. And there were gaps, which, the amplified sounds, some of those types of things, noise emanating from vehicles. There were gaps in our old noise ordinance, which this fills those gaps. But by and large, it was an enforcement issue. We had difficulty enforcing the old one. So what you're saying makes sense. We don't necessarily have to make this, certainly the last thing we want to do is make this more complex. Mm-hmm. We were trying to, the whole goal was simplification. I don't know the answer regarding the golf courses. It may be an issue, may not be. But we certainly don't want to create extra.
But they operate under our existing noise ordinance now. This noise ordinance, while it may be a little bit more restrictive, it certainly is a little bit easier to understand. So we need to give them an opportunity to see if it impacts their operation. With the exception of the morning, leaf blowers or whatever.
By and large, we're complaint driven.
Yeah.
So if we don't get the complaint, we're probably not out there with the sound meter, which is why you haven't seen many of these issues in the past, because most people don't mind hearing the music coming from the country club or understand that part of living on a golf course is having those machines running around in the morning. So I don't know that we in turn end up having these issues or not.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to make sure that I understand. We said two things in terms of what things need to be added to this document. The first is special use permits with specific language for noise should rule.
I think that's what we would get.
If that's
Right.
what you all want, I guess that's the question. Is that the prerogative?
It was even a little more than that. It was, if there's any noise standard in any of the Milton codes, the more restrictive standard would control.
That's not what they want, though.
No. It's
Except that with respect to a special use permit, it will control.
right. Okay.
Right, because otherwise what we're comparing...
In the first case, do we have to call that out, or does that just happen naturally?
I think it happens naturally, but my only point is if that's what the council intends, because I think that's what we've discussed, then let's call it out.
Okay.
It'll just save us having to go through that interpretive exercise the next time it comes out. We've got two conflicting noise standards that are both applicable. Which one controls? Well, now we know the more restrictive controls, except if it's a special use permit, in which case the permit controls.
All right. So we got three things. We've got in cases where there's a use permit in conflict with this, the more restrictive ordinance should apply, or the more restrictive rules should apply. Unless let me keep going. Unless it's a special use permit with specific language for noise, in which case those rules should apply.
Correct.
And we should allow for a footnote so that the director can make variations to the to increase or modify the time frames for specific cases and uses. I think that's maybe confusing.
My notes, and again, you're right, my notes indicated that that was pertaining to commercial lawn maintenance on commercial uses, and it was primarily limited to Saturdays, because right now that's at 9 a.m., and I think the concern was at a minimum that should go back to 7:30.
Well, the Saturday and Sundays.
Saturday and Sunday for the golf course, but again, that may be
Sundays, they can't even do
under
it
the
right
director.
now, can they?
Right.
That's correct. Sundays
Correct.
they cannot-
And I think you even wanted to go earlier than 7:30.
Well, 7:30 is okay. I mean, they can,
But definitely Saturday and Sunday.
yeah.
So, but we're calling it a footnote, Ken, is that what
We
you're
are.
saying? So a footnote for commercial use cases to allow for variations
Holidays, yeah.
to increase or modify timeframes in for specific uses. Yeah, I don't like that
think it
last.
was-
I think you got to call out the specific uses.
I have language. If you want to
Okay.
make a motion and then
Okay.
show it to me,
I will do that.
I'll read the language that I.
Do you have all three of these things covered? Because,
I
we
do
did a
not.
great
I
job
have-
just now.
I have the footnote language.
Okay. All right.
Okay, any other comments, and we'll, Joe make a stab at a motion. Pick me.
Is that it?
Go ahead, Joe.
All right.
Yes.
Mayor, I move that we approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 20 of the City Code Noise Control Agenda Item 17-170 with the following changes. The first one, in cases where there is an option between a use permit and the city ordinance, the more restrictive rules should control, with the exception of being that in a special use permit with specific language for noise, those rules should apply. And then the last change would be exactly what Ken is about to tell us.
This would be a footnote in the chart with respect to lawn maintenance and garage machinery by commercial uses for Saturdays and Sundays
And federal,
and federal holidays.
yeah.
And the language would be, the director shall have the discretion to authorize an administrative variance for golf course and equestrian uses to adjust the start time to as early as 7:30 a.m. on a case-by-case basis if the director believes that such variance is in the best interest of the user and affected property owners.
What is that variance process going to consist of? Will that be a hard process, or?
Very informal. Simple.
So I think later in the ordinance, so we could just follow the same procedure. We have Kathy is permitted to grant variances. It's on the last page, page 10.
Rather than
So it could be
discuss this
similar
right
to
now,
that.
can we get a second, or can we not get a second?
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, now we can talk about it.
Got a question from
So
Councilmember Lund-
it's
hold on,
addressed.
Rob.
I mean, she
Hold
would
on,
just
Robin.
do it in the same procedure that the variance is 20-6.
Okay, hold on one second, Rob. I got a motion from Councilmember Longoria, a second from Councilmember Kuntz. Now, okay, go ahead, Rob.
Okay. So it's addressed on the last page under variances, how she would proceed.
You've already got variance now.
Okay, any discussion? The only thing I would say is, again, you try to fix something that maybe not totally broken, and I totally understand why we're doing this on the enforcement side, but we may just want to be flexible enough to relook at this sometime in the near future if it's having any negative impact. So, And when I say negative impacts, not necessarily just on the businesses but whatever, if it has negative impacts for the citizens, and if we need to adjust something, be open to doing that.
I make one recommendation regarding the motion. I know Ken likes to have some restriction in there regarding the times, but I'm not entirely sure for a golf course on the front end, 7:30 might be the right time, or for an equestrian facility. We didn't talk about the end time on that. Maybe you allow the director the variance flexibility to go beyond that, not necessarily call out the time. I mean, you're teeing off by 8 o'clock in the morning. It's 7:45 actually. And an equestrian facility may go beyond 9 for a specific event or something along those lines. The times may be an issue if you call it out.
I would agree.
How do we make that just, that would be a change to the footnote, right? So you would.
It would be, and I think that makes some sense. So if we just wanted to, even as just I think in Milton we do like a friendly amendment to just remove the actual numerical time that was put in there and just leave it as a variance for the director to make.
I think I have a second from Matt.
Do I need to remove my second?
If you would remove your second, and then, Joe, are you interested in?
Yeah, I would like to make that friendly amendment if somebody would offer it.
With the second.
Okay, so just state your motion again, or you don't have to state it, but.
My motion is stated as
you already
previous
stated,
with the change that the city manager made.
Okay, and then Matt seconded. Okay. I have a motion as stated from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Kuntz. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous, City. Thank you, Robin.
I'll just stay up here for the next one.
City, if you'd please call the next item.
Next item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 50 subdivisions of the City Code, Section 5186F, construction activities restricted to certain hours. Agenda item number 17216. First presentation was at the August 21st meeting. Ms. Robin McDonald.
Okay, so there was some discussion in the previous meeting regarding construction time limitations. So I think there was a resident who brought up the issue of it's not just noise, but the actual construction activity that can occur, that if you're not really making noise, then you can do the construction. So based on the council's direction, staff has proposed a new ordinance. So there's two different locations it would be. It would be in Section 50, which is subdivisions, which speak to the construction or development of subdivisions, moving the dirt around type of thing. And then also Section 10, which is in regards to buildings and building regulations. So that's the actual, construction of structures. So with that said, we had proposed the following. It shall be unlawful for any person to engage in or conduct any activity in the construction of any building or structure, the moving of earth or laying of any pavement, including but not limited to the making of any excavation, clearing or grading of surface land, and loading or unloading material, equipment, or supplies except between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, and 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, unless a permit for each work at different hours or days has first been issued by the Community Development Director. And then it speaks about how these permits could be requested. And then toward the end, it states, the foregoing provision shall not apply to any person performing construction activity at his or her residence, but such persons are subject to the noise control ordinance set out in Section 20-659 of this code, which you all just approved. So I believe this is addressing the issues that you all had brought up the last time. So if you have any questions or comments, be happy to take that.
I'd like to just get some input. Is this, you may not have it exactly, but close to what other municipalities and areas have? Do you see anything that's drastically different?
This is pretty consistent with what other jurisdictions have, so.
I guess I'm a little confused because I know that when it comes to like construction within my office building, when they're doing tenant improvements, they try to do those after hours so that they don't bother the people that are working. And I know they do the same thing with shopping centers, is they try to do it after hours so that they're not bothering the people that are there. How would this be impacted
So,
for them?
so this would impact their permitting to do it, but also, again, they can ask for relief from that from Kathy, from the Community Development Director. Usually it's not long-term. It's usually, a few days or a concrete pour early in the morning, things like that, so.
I mean, I'll tell you, after having them work on the floor below me in my office building for about 2 weeks, I was glad for them to start doing it in the evenings and finish up at 6 or 7 in the morning because we couldn't get anything done. It was so noisy. So I guess, like I said, we want to make sure we're not making laws that have unintended consequences.
Well, another point, too, I think we need to realize that, well, I think on the surface, and a lot of our citizens would support these restrictions, but, a lot of our citizens that are moving here or remodeling their houses or whatever, it's a struggle, number one, to get their homes done. It's going to impact them negatively, too, when they're trying to get the painter or whoever's showing up and all that. So we just have to be careful that we don't impact it too bad.
So can I point out that the last sentence, at least for residential and people's personal homes, it says the foregoing provision shall not apply to any person performing construction activity at his or her residence. I mean, I guess we could amend it to say, or their contractors or...
Robin, it's just, that's going to, so we never included this in the original noise ordinance. The reason we came back with this was because of the direction to bring something back like this. If you start doing that, you're going to really negate anything that was intended
right,
with the original direction. For some reason, there was a general belief in this city that there was a restriction on construction during those times, but the reality was there was only a restriction on the noise emanating from that construction, which was kind of driving, I think, the request from council to ask us to bring something like this back. So that is why we are where we are.
Can we, anyway, I know we're working on enforcement of it, but...
That's where we get most of our complaints.
Yeah.
It's
I'm just wondering, can we handle
related.
that versus enforcement of the sound, not enforcement of the hours?
You're saying this addresses an issue you get more complaints about?
So when we get our noise ordinance complaints are usually about construction.
Okay.
I would say 98 out of 100 are construction-related complaints. And what we originally, again, people thought that it was a time-related issue. You couldn't have any contractors on site between the given hours, when the reality is it was the sound. So we'd get the noise complaints. We'd go out there with the sound meter, but unfortunately, the old code was very difficult to get through. But the old code addressed it similarly to what you're talking about right now, that it was entirely based on the sound that was emanating from the construction site, not the activity. But some of the people that came up were upset about the trucks coming in and out of the sites and things along those lines, which I think, if my memory serves me correctly, was driving the request by council to go back and take another look at the restricting the hours.
It's interesting. Actually, a lot of this is actually covered in the changes we just went over, because we just had a category of operation of construction machinery, and of course the hours mimic each other. Mm-hmm. But really the difference is, for instance, this was broader. This language is a little bit broader than that, so it does capture a few things that other chart wouldn't necessarily capture.
I think this may need a little bit more work before we actually pass something to make sure what is being passed is what we really intend for it to. Because, like I said, if there's no noise and there's no traffic coming in and out, then I don't know what difference it makes if people are working in a 5-story office building at midnight to try to get the work done when people aren't in the office building.
So, again, I just think we want to be careful, unintended consequences, and I am not, my position or thoughts or discussion on this is not based on from the construction or the contractor side. It's more from the homeowner side, citizen. And I'll an example might be everybody's all for tree ordinance and, having to get permits to take a tree down and all this. But then on the flip side, us at City Hall hear the citizens complaining about all the red tape and all the permit issues and all that they have to go through. So, it's fine when it's everybody else, but then as they're dealing with it. And again, I think we need to be careful that for our citizens' sake that we don't make it so onerous and so many, special uses and having to get permits and all that, they get frustrated.
And we could go back to what we originally had, and that was noise. I mean, I was just talking to Ken, our current, what we have in the current ordinance actually would address the correct times and actually the correct activities.
And isn't that more what we're talking about? Because if, it's like the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody sees it, it's not really bothering anybody. But, isn't that what we're talking about? If it's actually noise that's bothering someone else, that's when it needs to be addressed. But if it's not affecting anybody, then is it a real problem?
Well, I mean, your noise ordinance, which you just approved, regulates the operation of construction machinery by commercial users fairly tightly now, which is not terribly unlike what this does, except as I mentioned, it's broader. I mean, this language you're looking at now says it is unlawful to engage in the activity of the construction of a building, whether you're putting putty on sheetrock or whether you're running a circular saw. So that's the difference. So it is broader. And I think you've captured a lot of the evil you're trying, evil metaphorically, that you're trying to regulate in your noise code.
So should we table or defer this to some future date until we can get an idea of whether or not the new noise ordinance has the desired impact and covers this?
If this were tabled, would it go back to the existing?
There is nothing.
There is none.
Yeah, they're
Brand new.
Well, but
It would
when I
go
say
back to
existed
the
by
noise.
based on noise.
Be the noise ordinance. That's what you default to, and this can never, you can come back or not in the discretion of the council.
Anybody?
Steve,
we got to take a vote on this, right? Because it's on the agenda?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to take a vote either to approve, deny, or withdraw it. I mean,
Okay.
so sure.
so Steve,
On that,
just a quick question. I apologize, Joe. So from your perspective, Steve, we're doing this, and I'm just a little confused about this extra part of it as well. And I see the ordinance that we just passed, which to me is pretty good, especially with the footnotes that we just had. I'm trying to understand the purpose of this other part as well, and obviously this can be more restrictive or not. Do we need this? In your mind, is this something that's necessary or not?
It's a big question, even though it shouldn't be. Because some of our residents are not necessarily concerned with the noise that's coming out of the sites, but they are equally concerned with the activity at these sites.
Okay.
I think that's what drove the direction for us to go back and take a look at that. I'm relatively sure I'm on target with that. But again, it is ultimately noise that is the annoyance.
So this
when it
is
comes
more
to
of an
construction.
activity basis, but not necessarily a noise. Noise is how we enforce it,
Dead
but
on.
this is about activity, is the idea, right? And so from an enforcement perspective, we can only enforce noise. I worry about trying to have any legislation that is designed to achieve an effect by using a roundabout.
Well, I mean,
I
you could
understand,
argue
but
that the commercial building activity, even if it doesn't produce noise, can still be disruptive to those who are right next to it, even if there's no peculiarly loud noise. For instance, this one prohibits loading or unloading materials.
Sure.
Well, I mean, you've got a truck, and you've got.
So when we have these complaints, just to make sure I understand them, which you said this is primarily where we have the complaints, is it based on the activity or is it based on the noise?
Also, not an easy question. The minute many people see them on the site, they call because of the sound of a truck driving over gravel. And they call in a noise complaint because they believe that our ordinance actually dictates that they're not allowed to be on the site.
So they're using noise as an excuse, but the activity is what they're trying to call on.
They're calling on the activity based on the belief that that is prohibited. There are some people that don't want to see them there, and
Right.
that's why we get the calls.
So we get the calls on this, and obviously what happens then? We go out there and we tell them what?
It varies depending on the activity. Sometimes there's actual work being done, and we tell them that they can't do it. We have also gone and erroneously told construction people that they couldn't be on the site, even though they were allowed to be on the site. We were also confused, apparently, by the regulations.
So by clarifying the activity, even though this is about noise, it's about activity, right? Am I saying this right?
It is.
This is why it's confusing on this, and I'm worried that we might be doing too much here.
The second piece has what Robin's talking about right now has nothing to do with noise.
Yeah.
There's no noise threshold that triggers this.
The only reason this is back before you is because of the response from our last discussion.
Right.
Is it possible to?
Hold on one second, Karen. I think Joe wanted to say something. Karen, can you next?
Sorry. Did we ask for this because of citizen input, or did a council member, suggest that this is what we need to do? Because I'm not hearing anybody saying, this is what's wrong, this is what'll fix it, and this is why this ordinance is needed.
It's back before you as a result of direction from council.
All right. Somebody needs to own up to it.
Is it possible to put in the ordinance that it's restricted unless allowed based on the director's approval per their building permit? Because there are some things that we need to have done at night, and it's,
The way this reads right now, Councilmember Thurman, is it gives a wide latitude for the director to issue permits that carve out express exceptions to these rules. In fact, the way 5186F as proposed says is here is your default, but if you can come in and you can make a case by showing what you're going to do and the reason you're seeking a permit to do work outside of the above stated days and times, then you can get a permit that will allow that. So yes, that is possible, and that's in fact the way this reads.
without having to actually get a variance, it's just part of the permit
part of the
process.
permitting
Because I want to make sure that they're not having to pay for a variance when it really should be part of the permit process.
I handle it as an email request. It's that simple.
Okay.
So
And I think that's what we want to be careful of. It all sounds good, right here in a few instances, but what are there, 16, 17,000 homes in Milton, and, for everybody, if the painter calls them on a Friday and says, hey, I got a little break in my schedule, I can be there tomorrow evening or whatever, or something like that, and then obviously, well, you've got to go get a permit, and it's the weekend, and, Kathy's deluged with, 100 permits or
It would be
something
difficult.
like that. I think it might be kind of difficult. So
Enforcement
kind of
as
going
well.
back to what Joe said, I wonder, are we, creating a fix for something that we really don't have that big of a issue with?
So I think that issue is addressed on the last sentence, that it doesn't apply to any person performing construction activity at his or her residence. So if the painter wants to come at whatever time at 9 p.m. Friday night.
That's how I read
Oh, because it says his or her residence means your own personal
almost
residence.
sounds like
But I
you're
mean,
doing it
we're
yourself.
doing
we
it,
could
I
add,
think
I guess we were saying, I was suggesting you could add or her designee.
Because then I'd be able to I would be able to bring that along to bring in outside contractors, and how would we be able to differentiate between the two? It would be difficult. From an enforcement standpoint, Kathy's going back and forth by email. It's going to be very difficult for a police officer getting a call on a Sunday to be able to determine whether or not there was an email exchange between Kathy and somebody without a permit in hand. It could get a little messy there.
I think it's hard for us to enforce or dictate private business. And we've had situations where on businesses we've, thought about the hours and this and that. And the reality is we can't really, I don't think it's healthy for the government to dictate things that are going on, whether it's the contractors or the private. I think it's more incumbent on us to make sure that we're enforcing noise ordinances that are affecting others. So to me, that's more of the issue. If somebody's, working and got lights on in a house and working at 9 p.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning or whatever, but it's not bothering anybody, to me, I don't have a problem with that. It's more if they're making noises that's affecting the neighbors that are, past the decibels or within reason or whatever, an undue noise. To me, that's where I'm looking. It's more about what's the harm that it's doing to others.
When you have a noise ordinance that you just put in place that is more clear, that seems to be fairly comprehensive, my respectful recommendation, of course, you're the policymakers, would be to let that noise ordinance test its wings for a while to see if there is, in fact, a need for this other language. Again, that's...
Okay, that makes total sense to me.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Joe?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to withdraw agenda item number 17-216.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for withdrawal from Councilmember Longoria, second by Councilmember Thurman. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Might jump the gun on this next one as well, because
All right.
this is basically the same thing
It's the
except
same.
in a different case,
All
right?
Let me allow Sudi to call the item first. And then
Yep.
Sudi?
This item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 10, Buildings and Building Regulations of the City Code, Section 10-97, Construction Activities Restricted to Certain Hours. Agenda item number 17-217. First presentation was at the August 21st meeting. Ms. Robin McDonald.
So this is the exact same language, so whatever you all want to do. That's fine.
All right. I'll open it for discussion and then certainly make a motion. Any discussion on this? Okay, I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I move that we withdraw agenda item number 17-217.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for withdrawal. Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Morrig. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, let's move on to new business. Sudi, if you'll please sound the first item.
This item is consideration of a conflict waiver on behalf of Gerard and Davis, LLP, to represent the City of Milton and Forsyth County as an interested party in a law enforcement mutual aid agreement with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. Agenda item number 17-235. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much. You know that I'm fairly rigorous about bringing these to you. This was a law enforcement mutual aid agreement between actually the City of Milton, as manifested by the council, and the Forsyth County Sheriff, although the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners will sign off as a nominal party on that agreement. As you know, and as I have said repeatedly, I would never bring you a waiver if I felt there was a true conflict that prevented me from being a good advocate on both sides of this. These mutual aid agreements are very perfunctory. All jurisdictions engage in these. There's not a whole lot of negotiation. It's basically both sides agreeing into advance that if we need you, we get to call on you, and here's the terms upon which we'll do that. So I feel very comfortable that nobody's interest will be impaired at all by this waiver. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item number 17-235.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Thurman, second from Councilmember Kutz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, Sudi, could you please call the next new business item?
The next item is approval of a contract with Bain Development Group, LLC, for the provision of a mobile fire training facility for Milton Fire Rescue. Agenda item number 17236, Chief Bob Edgar.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. What I have before you this evening is seeking your approval for a new mobile training unit for our fire department. The mobile training unit is a container similar to what we have brought before. It's a single container. It's 40 feet long. It's 8 feet wide. It sits on wheels. It's on a trailer. And what it does is it gives us the ability to practice firefighter training skills very similar to what we could do at other training facilities, but we don't have access to at this point. It has different props in there where we can set up different types of configurations, and it gives us the ability to change those configurations to adapt to some of the different types of training that we want to do each day. As I said, I'm sorry, the length is 48 feet, the width is 8 feet, the height is 8.5 feet. It weighs about 38,000 pounds, and it requires a fifth wheel tractor to move this mobile unit to different locations. And we've consulted with United Towing, and they advised that they would charge us a flat fee of $150 if we move it or when we move it to whatever location within the city limits that we choose. Here's a conceptual drawing of the mobile unit. And as you can see, it sits on wheels. It has staircases and collapsible tower. Everything folds down and folds inside the unit if and when we move this unit. The goal here, I'll go ahead and show you a different view of that. Here's another side. It gives us the opportunity to raise ladders to the tower, rappel off it, teaching our firefighters how to escape out of hazardous environments on upper floors of buildings. It gives us an opportunity to train on different types of ventilation. Go on to another one. Here's the burn room. It also has the ability for us to do some Class A burning in there to create a heat environment, so our firefighters have the experience of that. Let me go one more here. It also allows the firefighters to practice their ceiling breach and wall breach. We're pulling ceilings and those kinds of things, breaching walls for different types of training activities, as well as escaping from hazardous environments that they may be required to actually go through a wall to escape. We have a maze that's also available in here where we can reconfigure the walls and move them around. So when we do different types of training in the dark, just like going into a home that we're not really familiar with, doing search and rescue exercises, we can actually change the configuration of this so we don't become, it's not this muscle memory type thing. We can go in there and change it around and give them different opportunities for search and rescue. Here's the roof ventilation piece on the outside. The piece on the left there, the roof ventilator, gives us the opportunity to actually put plywood in there. We shingle it, and then the firefighters can get up there and cut that with chainsaws and axes and stuff like that to simulate roof ventilations. On the other side there is a standpipe operation where we go into some of our buildings that have high-rise, what I consider to be high-rise, that have standpipe connections, where we can do interior firefighting on upper floors and connect to these type of standpipes that are in these buildings. Why do we need this? We don't have very many fires anymore, and if we don't get to practice in as real or as close to real environments as we can, then we tend to we're going to lose our skills. If you don't practice it, you're going to lose the skill. So this gives us the opportunity to get into an environment that's hot, it's uncomfortable, but we get to practice some of the things that we should be doing or need to do in the event of a fire. Again, it's a low frequency, but it's a high risk environment that we're, when we're fighting fires. We don't do it that often, but when we do, we want to be ready. And that's what this is going to allow us to do. It also meets the ISO requirements for our facility training, which right now we are struggling to meet because we don't have the access that we should to the different our area training sites such as Rapstick and Cherokee County. They accommodate us when they can, but we have to fit into their schedule. And a lot of times that we don't fit into their schedule. And it makes it very difficult for us to acquire and meet the hour requirements. And each firefighter is required to complete 240 hours of training every year, on top of some other specialty type training. That's just the basic firefighter training. This has been part of our strategic plan. It also was in our 5-year capital plan. And on July 25th of this year, we went out to bid, and we received 4 proposals, and Bain Development was the lowest at $165,000 for this unit. The specifics, the facility would be stationed at Station 43 in the back of the fire station. We have a rear parking lot area back there. It's graveled, and It will fit right within there. It has outriggers on it, so the 8-foot container then has an additional 4 feet on each side for outriggers to support it so it doesn't tip over when we're on the upper training tower of that. And that will fit within the 20 feet of the parking space that we have in the back of the station. We'll be able to use it for our CERT program that's going to be, we're going to be putting that out this year. And it also for anticipating for our Citizens Fire Academy that we hope to be starting. We can move it around. Everything, like I said earlier, folds into the container, so it's mobile. We can move it to different locations. We've been in contact with Cambridge High School. They're very interested in partnering with us on an EMT and firefighter program, so we can actually bring it to their location. Hopefully when we complete our public safety complex on Highway 9, we have direct access to the back of the high school, so we can then put it back there and actually bring the students in and do the training with them there. And the big thing here is we get to keep all units in the city. Right now we have to travel to Rapstick, we have to travel to Cherokee County. This keeps our units available in the city, and we have a training room up at Station 43. We have the capability of rehab there in the event, during these training exercises it gets very hot, especially during the summertime, wearing all that gear and all, and going through the burn building and all that. So it gives us an opportunity for rehab as well as a classroom there, so we can do some classroom stuff and then go outside and do the training outside in the training unit. And any questions?
Anybody have any questions, Rick?
So this takes the place of when we considered a permanent facility, so we don't have the issues that we had run into when we discussed that, and you can move this around. It also has the tower, so you do the stairs, the height.
Correct. It meets the ISO requirement of 3 stories, and that gives us a capability of doing rappelling and other types of ladder raises and training of that nature. And yes, it does replace. It's not the facility that originally was brought before you, but this will satisfy us and meet our needs, yes.
And I think this is, it's great because, some of the concerns from the citizens, well, it's a great tool that we need, the building, but there was concerns about neighbors around this way. As Rick said, it can be moved. It's not as, it can be behind the fire station.
Correct.
I think all around it's great. You can keep our guys close. They don't have to go elsewhere. And again, I don't remember the exact number of the facility, but it was 600,000 or 700,000, wasn't it, versus 165?
Yes, the original price tag was closer to 500,000.
Okay. So.
And I've got some numbers from our original. When we talked about the first facility, we talked about what the cost was that Rapstick was going to charge us to actually bring our people down there. And in order for us to complete all the training for every firefighter in the department annually, that cost is $81,570.
Per year.
Per year. So this will...
Less than 3 year
Yeah,
ROI.
Break even.
The chief went through an extensive cost-benefit analysis on this, and he was able to quickly show that this was by far the best option.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Anybody else? Anybody want to make a motion?
Mayor, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 17-236.
Second.
Chief, would you rather talk some more about it? Or?
No, sir.
All right. We have a motion from Council
Going to
Member.
stop me when I put the...
Member Kuntz, second by Councilmember Longoria. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? What do you guys sitting back there think? All right. Stay close to home.
One last comment, Chief. I think this is great, especially when you talk about getting out in the community, because I remember when my kids were little, and they used to bring the burn unit, and they would bring it to the elementary, and they would teach kids how to escape, so families actually get the benefit of the training. We train our young kids, not just the firefighters themselves, so I think this is great.
Correct. And that's the great thing about this is that we can move it and we can bring it to different locations and share it with the community a little bit more than having a fixed facility somewhere else.
I think it's great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, opportunity to thank all our fire department guys back here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sudi, if you please sound the next and final new business item.
Next item is consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia, enacting an emergency moratorium to bar until October 17th, 2017, the acceptance of applications for concept plan approval and applications for issuance of land disturbance permits for residential development of property in the T6 transect zone within the Deerfield Form-Based Code District. Agenda item number 17237, Ms. Kathy Field.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This is a request to enact a moratorium so that we could have time to revise the zoning ordinance as it relates to the T6 transect zone, which is a zone that's only in the Deerfield Form-Based Code. It is our highest density zone, and we're concerned that this high density zone allows residential use. Considering the fact that we made it our highest density, our expectation is that undeveloped sites would be developed at a much denser purpose than residential. And indeed, it even allows single family. So we would like the opportunity to relook at the allowed uses as it relates to residential for this transect zone, to consider the elimination of these residential uses. This is very similar to the previous moratorium that we had put in place for Route 9, where we eliminated the residential uses because from an economic development point of view, and this is exactly the same thing. So we would like the opportunity to do this as well for the T6.
And just to clarify, the T6 is fairly limited in the areas, and I know we had some properties over, originally that had some mixed use or want to do residential, but these won't affect them. These are only for T6, which is the highest density. Correct?
That's right. Now, if you're referring to the property that was next to our old city hall, that is also zone T6. And
I'm referring to more like 5 Acres Road and whatnot. I know there was some.
Oh, those are up. Those are not T6.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Means.
The T6
yes.
is limited. Okay.
That's right.
And this moratorium only applies to residential development.
To the proposed elimination of residential uses within the T6 zone.
Okay. So it's not an impact at all for that density if someone were considering commercial.
Commercial, office, mixed use, it does not impact that. It impacts the residential use.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. We'll open up.
I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item number 17-237, consideration of resolution for an emergency moratorium to bar until October 17th, acceptance of applications for conceptual plan approval and applications for issuance of land disturbance permits for residential development of property in the T6 transect zone within Deerfield Form-Based Code.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion for approval from Councilmember Morig with a second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
I have a question for discussion real quick.
Okay.
Just 1 second.
Matt?
And on this, you're talking for the intent of this moratorium is to make sure that it remains entirely commercial, and not entirely residential, but is there any room for mixed use in the intent of this or no?
I think it is mixed use.
Is that what you're trying to go to, just to keep?
Yes, it would allow mixed use
in
of
T6.
not residential, but of commercial and office.
Okay. Well, mixed use of commercial and office, but no like commercial with some apartments above it or anything like that.
Not the way that we're proposing it, although we can certainly change it to allow for, and we do allow, as we had considered that proposal that came to us on the property right next to City Hall, which was a mixed use of residential, and we had asked that they submit also some mixed use in there.
Right.
That is a use permit.
Okay.
And so we could allow that type of use, which is a residential with a 50% mix of use or first floor being mixed use, through the use permit. So we could continue to allow those. Right now, we are proposing that all residential, including those types of use permits, but we would certainly look to the council for direction on that.
And I was just thinking of a smaller scale of kind of what Avalon has done in some of that issue. And I just want to make sure we don't eliminate that possibility if that's something we're doing in this. So just my consideration. I'm okay with the moratorium so long as we're having that discussion. So, okay. So they have a motion and a second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Move on to reports. Anything the council wants to report on?
Just want to congratulate all Georgia fans for beating my Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I was not even going to bring that up.
That was extremely painful.
That was a painful game to watch.
Just one of those things. So congratulations to everybody in Georgia. I'm a good sport about that. But that was tough. Joe Parker, I know you write sports stuff all the time, so there you go. So
I'll echo Matt's comments.
All right. Then we'll turn over to staff reports.
Greetings, Mayor, members of council. I want to share with you our crime and accident stats for the last reporting period. We're still on a downward trend. I'm happy to report accidents are down by 8%, or 42 accidents from this time last year. We're also down personal injury crashes by 18%. Crime overall is down 11%. That's our Part 1 crimes. We had 242 incidents last year as opposed to 216 this year. Last 28 days, we're down 78% in Part 1 crimes, or 28 incidents. Our property crime overall is down 11%, and also our violent crime is up by one incident, but still with a 100% clearance rate, and we are still in single digits with that. We've had 8 total violent crimes this year. In conjunction with that, too, we've continued on our downward trend, especially with our accidents. We've been offering some educational opportunities. One of those was a Teen Pride driving class held on August 29th at the PD, geared toward our teen drivers and their parents. And that was well attended, and we also sponsored a car safety seat check at the Target parking lot, and that was well attended with many parents. We have technicians out there that help them ensure that they're getting the maximum benefit from their child safety restraints. So we're pleased to see that was well attended. And that's all I have.
All right.
Okay.
Questions?
Any questions? And again, not only to you, Chief, but to all your guys, we appreciate everything you do. They're keeping us safe. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Fire?
Again?
You got to keep it quick because you got a new building.
I'm tired tonight, so I get to play with all the toys tonight too. If I do this right. Okay. First, I start off with, as we all know, that Hurricane Harvey destroyed Houston, and over 300 firefighters in Houston have either severe damage to their homes or complete total loss. So the Georgia Fire Chiefs Association got with the Texas Fire Marshal's Office, and they came up with a plan. And all of the metro fire departments, all the firefighters in the metro area on Friday went out and did a boot drive for the firefighters of Houston to help them get back on their feet and support them. And I'm proud to say that, again, our boot drive was very successful. We went out for 2 hours, and we raised nearly $7,000 in 2 hours worth of work. So that money's been deposited into the Fire Chiefs Association account, and that will be then transferred over to Houston for the firefighters over there. So again, the community came forward, and you stand out there with a boot and a fire uniform, and they just give it and give and give. So we're very thankful for that.
You have a second career as a development director somewhere.
Okay, let me make sure I get this right.
You can zoom out on that too if you need to see a little bit more on that top scroll. Yes.
Okay. I don't have crime stats, but I have some, what we did is we did a comparison from 2016 to 2017 in a 12-month period. And what I wanted to show was that you can see a breakdown of our different types of NIFR codes that we use when we code fire calls. And what you see here is the total 911 responses from 2016 to 2017. We've had a 4% increase. And the one number that stands out, though, is the overpressure and explosion, which is a 300% increase. But you can also see that we only had 4 of those, and we had 1 of those in 2016. So that accounts for the high number there. But I wanted to give you a snapshot of that. Our call volume is going up. We are busier. And I think there's a lot of things that I probably attribute to that. But I just wanted to give you an idea of where we are and what's going on out there on our side, on the fire side, and our responses. You can also see that the fire pre-plans and the public events, some of those have gone down a little bit. We've had an 8% decrease, but that again is tied to the way those pre-plans are scheduled. So we may have a lot of strip malls or strip shopping centers doing those at one part of the year, but then the other part of the year we're doing schools, which may take up that much longer. It takes a long time to do a pre-plan and inspect a school. So it's just the way it falls on the calendar as to why we see that decrease. You will probably see next year is that we'll see that it evens out each year. Year over year, it will even out because we're doing the same. Every year, we inspect every commercial building in the city. So it's consistent each year. It's just the way it fell within the way this comparison was done. And then our plan review is up 4%, which is consistent with a lot of the construction and building that's going on. So if you have any questions on that. And then I'd like to share with you one more. I'm still playing with the toys here. This is, can I zoom out more? This was put together by Alpharetta Dispatch and Public Safety. This is the responses from Monday from Hurricane Irma. And you can see here how the responses were and how they were broken down and the time frame that they occurred, or the greater number of calls occurred. And you can see from 4 o'clock till about, I'd say about 6 o'clock or so, the call volume went way up from what we were dealing with during the day and earlier in the day. And that's consistent with what Alpharetta saw. Actually, this is Alpharetta and Milton together, all the 911 that came in through their dispatch center. So, but you can see how the call volume went up at 4 o'clock. It was 30 calls, and then by 5 o'clock we're at 50 calls, and then at 6 o'clock we're at 46 calls. So, and that's a combination of all the 911 calls that came into the center. So, and that doesn't account for some of the incidents that the firefighters and police officers came upon as they were out there in the community doing their job. They may have come on something that didn't necessarily make the 911 call, but they came upon it pretty quick. So just a snapshot of what went on Monday. What I'd like to do, though, is have our emergency manager come up, Matt, if it's all right to take a minute, to give you an overview of how Monday night went, and he can give you a little bit more specific details and numbers on what we responded to and how the EOC worked and the emergency management side and all the documentation that went on there. Matt?
Good evening. We've been watching this storm as it was building out in the Caribbean and starting up our direction. As soon as we thought it might have some impact on Georgia, Public Works, police, fire, everybody started getting together to make sure we were prepared for it. That really ramped up starting Friday and then into Saturday and Sunday when we realized that we're probably going to take a pretty significant hit from it. The Emergency Operations Center was opened or set up at around 5 a.m. on Monday morning. We didn't know when the first bands were going to hit. And we proceeded to get all of our core staff there, including Public Works, Finance was there, City Manager came in, Police, Fire, and prepare ourselves for these high wind events and potential flooding and everything. You all saw the predictions as to what we were preparing for. So fortunately for us, as the day wore on, Milton was kind of in a calm spot. We had reports of lines down, power outage in Gwinnett and Noonan on the south side, But as you looked at the wind speeds, there was kind of this backward C shape that encompassed North Fulton and to our west. And then, as the chief indicated earlier, the 911 calls started coming in, and the winds picked up, as I'm sure you all noticed. During that period of time, we tallied about 30 calls for trees down or wires down somewhere in the city, and those are ones that fell into the right-of-way. That's not just trees down on private property or so on. Something that we actually had to go out and cut the tree to be able to access a portion of the city or a subdivision. That resulted in some subdivisions being trapped. It resulted in some power outages. We got one structure fire call that we were able to mitigate because the tree fell on the house by turning the power off and clearing the house out. We had one tree into a house where it had significant intrusion in the side of the house, and we had to turn the power and the gas off and recommended that the homeowner leave for the night. And we also have one injury accident. Following that, we went out and did a preliminary damage assessment yesterday during the day, and we pretty much drove up and down every city in the street. And what we were looking for is power lines down or something in the right-of-way, but not necessarily in the roadway. So the citizens wouldn't call 911 for the road to be blocked, but it would be something that ultimately Public Works or the city would be responsible for cleaning up afterwards. And the reason that we do this is because in order to get a disaster declaration, that's handled at the county level, and all the municipalities in the county need to aggregate their dollar loss or their expense from the storm. And if we pass a certain threshold, which I believe at this point is about $3.6 million, I might be quoting you the wrong number off the top of my head, for Metro Atlanta, Fulton County, including the city of Atlanta and Milton. If we exceed that, then there may be some financial relief available. So we're in the process of trying to assemble those numbers, working with Public Works, Police Department, and our preliminary data damage assessment to aggregate those numbers, and we will turn those over to the county, and they'll put it together for the entire county. The county has issued an emergency declaration, and we're slowly working through that process now. I don't know if it's going to result in anything as far as reimbursement or a formal FEMA declaration, but this is part of the exercise that we go through when we have an event like this. So I would be happy to entertain any questions y'all have about this.
I just want to, thank you, Matt, Chief, everybody else that, part of the team that, you guys always kind of prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Yes. So, you did probably just as much work, even if we'd had a whole lot more damage, but just preparing and making sure we were covered. So thank you guys for that. Matt?
Yeah, I'd like to say that also I was, trapped in Sable Point because they had the two trees on either side of Henderson Road, and so residents were asking that. I also want to say thanks to Shannon for the communication as well, and your communication with them, because that was important, and honestly, people are asking questions, and all of a sudden Shannon and you guys came through on the communication. So just great teamwork all around, and just want to say thanks for that.
Just to second that, I forgot to mention her when I mentioned everybody that was in the EOC. She actually spent all morning and all evening there with us and was a real asset as far as real-time communication.
Yeah, she did great.
With the community.
Good. Rick?
And I was going to, I guess, to branch on to what Matt said, getting those notices on social media, on Facebook and whatever, timely, like where the trees were down, what to avoid, that was great, because then you knew don't go in those areas, and it was that quick. So I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, Twitter's awesome. You get there, and I have the automatic. Every time Shannon sends something, it automatically buzzes my phone, so I know something's always going on.
You do Twitter?
Oh yeah, big time.
Shannon did a great job in EOC, as well as putting together the medically fragile and elderly folks
Yeah,
list
that was
together.
great too.
And she put that together so quickly, and we were able to get that out. And we ended up with 20 people who signed up voluntarily for us to check on.
That's great.
We put two teams together. They went out into the community, and they made contact with every one of those folks. And it was well received by the community. So it's something we hope to build on in the future. But again, Shannon did a fantastic job of getting that out there in such short notice.
Is that something that we'll send out again now that things have calmed down to see?
We're going to name that program. We're going to expand on it. And every time we have an incident like this, that's going to be one of our top priorities, is checking on our vulnerable population.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks. again, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, HR next.
Did you use my time?
You used your time, Carter. I'm kidding, Sam. Carter? Hold on, Sam. Let Carter go first. Fire Chief used his time, but
If you've never spent 10 to 12 hours in a small room alone with this group, you don't know how big of a deal it was for Shannon to hang out the entire time with us. So it's not an easy group to hang out with for 10 to 12 hours. Okay, let's see. Quick update on a couple of things tonight. Our T-SPLOS program, current for August, we're seeing a slight uptick in our collections. We're up to $552,000 in August. Overall, the T-SPLOS program has collected slightly over $2 million. Our anticipated revenue at this point was about $2.3 million, so we are still running behind, but we are slowly getting back to where we anticipated being. When you look at how we had programmed our projects, we had estimated $550,000 per month for those projects, and so we have finally cleared that hurdle, and hopefully those numbers will continue to go up. Over the next month or two, we'll be working with the county to see if the Department of Revenue has a plan to go back and collect some of these revenues that we believe are still due. But at this point, we're moving forward with what we have. Update on a couple of our projects. The two projects that we have actively going right now are the Crabapple Northeast Connector, which is going to be the Charlotte extension over on the northeast side of Crabapple. That project is currently in survey, so we'll be working towards that and working towards some community concept meetings at the end of September. So as those come out, we'll update you all, and I'm sure Shannon will put some information out on that. The other project that was in that particular batch was the Hopewell at the Bethany's intersection improvement. If you remember, we did go through some concept planning on that a few years ago. So we're dusting that off. We're currently looking at updating the traffic models on those concepts that were developed out of that, and we'll be bringing forward some updates on that towards the end of October. The next batch of projects is going to be going out in the next couple of weeks for concept design. Those two projects are the Hopewell at Thompson intersection improvement and the Hopewell at Hamby intersection improvement. Even though those construction projects are actually out a few years, we need to get the concepts done so that we really understand the costs that are going to be associated with those two projects. So we'll be at least going through the concept development stage on those in our next batch of T-SPLOS projects. Okay. Our paving program is getting ready to begin finally. It was scheduled to begin with the Red Road turn lane on Monday, but that got rained out, so that will be progressing here as the contractor gets back online from that short delay. And also the Taylor Road improvements, that's the other big portion of that. That's a full depth reclamation project for the southern portion of Taylor Road. That's going to begin currently scheduled for September 25th. Those are the two main portions of that project. The other patch and pave and overlay projects will be beginning October 18th once those get underway. The only other thing I wanted to bring you up to speed on is our Mayfield Road sidewalk project. That's the sidewalks from the main intersection here down to the library. Those bids are due back on September 20th. We bid that in conjunction with a section of sidewalk for Alpharetta. So Alpharetta's got a piece that will go from Charlotte to Bascom Farm Drive, and then a piece from Bascom Farm Drive over to Freemanville. So depending on how those bids come out, they may be able to execute one or both of those particular projects. So hopefully at our next meeting, I'll be able to update you on where we are with that particular project. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Carter? Rick?
Can you give us a quick update on Bethany Bend and Strickland and Morris and McGinnis Ferry, that whole intersection and the roundabout? I know part of that is in Forsyth County, but do you have any updates on that?
I don't. It's all Forsyth County. So that those projects are being done as part of the DRI. That's right there in Forsyth County. So that's not anything that we've had any involvement in, but I can get some information on it for you.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Carter.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Good evening. What I want to talk about tonight was sort of the big project in HR over the last 6 weeks or so. It's been our renewal of health insurance and our open enrollment. we got our first quote back from Blue Cross. We're about 25% increase on our renewal. So we went out to market as we usually do, and at the end of the day, after a lot of hard work with Steve and Stacy and Bernadette, we made a decision to transition our health insurance from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Cigna. We ended up with about a 9% increase at the end of the day with Cigna. So that transition is going on with our employees now. We're having some open enrollment meetings. The plan designs and everything look pretty much the same. We made a couple of tweaks, a lot of them for the betterment of the employees. We also moved our dental over to Cigna as well through this transition, which saved us an extra percentage point on our health insurance renewal. So we've got a lot more of administrative work ahead of us on open enrollment, but that's really been the focus of HR for probably the last 6 weeks or so, to getting through the renewal and getting the information out to our employees and signing them up for benefits. So that's all I had tonight.
Any questions on that? All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Community outreach. Courtney.
Hi, y'all.
Good.
If you can bear with me for about 5 minutes, you'll have heard from almost half, more than half, of your city departments. And you can go home. Just to recap, since I last talked to you all, we had our big summer concert, Beach Bash, which went over really well. Even with the rain and thunderstorms, we still had a little over 1,000 people there. Very well received from the community, a lot of compliments, a lot of people asking if we would do it again and do more. I budgeted for one, so we'll see how well it goes without some rain. But that freed up my summer to work on some other things. To go through the rest of the year, we have changed our Veterans Day program to be a Veterans Day breakfast, which Milton and veterans will be invited to. General A.J. Tony Tata, who's a frequent speaker on CNN and Fox News, an analyst, is going to come speak for that. And that opens that's on November 11th, a Saturday, which is the same day as our Milton Literary Festival, which we sort of combined and have a veterans theme. There's a veteran panel. Their opening speaker is also a veteran, and I didn't write his name. I think it's Brent Witter, who helped write The Monuments Men, is one of our speakers. So it all combines to be a Veterans Day, a full day of Veterans Day activities. I've mentioned before, but to carry us through the end of the year, we're combining Christmas and Crabapple with our Milton tree lighting with a new tree at Broadwell. And then our everyone's favorite event, our pancake breakfast with Santa at the fire department, will be December 9th. And that'll wrap it up for Milton events through 2017. Hopefully, in these next few months, I'm working on the 18 calendar to get it ready to go. And again, finding new ways to engage, working on our Citizens Government Academy. Hopefully we can roll that out at the beginning of the year. And then working with the Equestrian Committee to collaborate with all these other things going on, Trails Committee, Parks, making sure that their input is heard.
Okay, any questions? No. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney.
Mayor.
Okay.
I was remiss earlier in the mayor and council reports. I just want to congratulate staff. Sudi and Jim Craig, and I forgot his name, our new employee, came up with the idea of bringing water bottles to Bell Memorial for helping the people in Houston. And, I just want to commend staff for coming up with good ideas. You guys do a lot of great things, and sometimes it was amazing. I looked at that with the way our office is set up here in New City Hall, and there's so much of a place for people to share ideas and to see staff members share ideas, and all of a sudden it comes to fruition to do something good in the country, not just here in the city. It was very positive in my mind. So I just want to commend, give credit where credit was due, just overhearing some good people come up with some good ideas to help people, and I think that was great. So.
Thank you.
Steve?
So most of my thunder was stolen. Next time I'll take my executive privilege and speak first. But I'd like to thank our staff, and as we went on, more and more people got included in that. That was certainly an exercise. We were prepared for the worst. Fortunately, what Matt was trying to find a word for was bubble, and he didn't want to say it.
I almost said that, Milton, bubble.
So he was searching his internal lexicon for the word that he wanted to use there. But I assure you, we were in some sort of bubble if you've traveled outside this area. I was up in Gainesville and Hull County yesterday, and it's a mess. We were very, very fortunate, but I must say that we were prepared had we been hit like that. And not only did we have the people that are used to coming in as first responders, we had an awful lot of our employees that weren't first responders voluntarily come in. They didn't have to come in. As you know, City Hall was closed on Monday. And we had a lot of our support staff that just showed up and said, what can I do? And they did. We gave them a lot to do. But, I mean, people that I wasn't anticipating seeing showed up here at City Hall. I'm not going to go through the names because I don't want to miss anyone. But we had a significant effort here. They were all prepared. In fact, some of them I was throwing out the door, at 5:30 in the afternoon saying, we're good. And they many ended up staying in that EOC till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we were prepared for the worst. We're thankful that we didn't end up that way, but just want you to be aware that staff was here and prepared to be able to deal with it. Good. And I want to thank them for the efforts they put in.
Yeah. We all do. Okay. With that, I'll conclude the meeting and have a motion that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second? I've got a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous, Sudi.